Hi Vishal.
Hi, good
Hi.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. So Saturday is off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you chose Saturday to give interview. Okay. Yeah. So Vishal, I will start with my introduction, and then I will tell you how interview flow is going to be. And yeah, so myself, Diptanshu Bharadwaj. Okay, I am from JobTwine. JobTwine is interviewing partner for the company you have applied for. Okay, so that's the thing. And so basically, this interview is for senior software engineer, right? And in this, basically, I'll be asking question from AWS, Docker, and Kubernetes. Okay,
Okay.
on these three skills, I am going to assess you. Okay, now to start with, maybe you can start with your introduction, and then you can take any one project from your resume with which you are most comfortable with your choice. Okay, and then you can explain me what did you do, what business impact you created, how did you solve it. Okay, and then I will start with, after that, technical questions. Okay,
Okay.
over to you, Vishal.
Thanks, Deep. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Vishal, and I'm born and brought up in Kanpur. It's a city in Uttar Pradesh. I have completed my graduation back in 2021. Thereafter, I've been started working. So it's around 5 years in working in DevOps and cloud. So I have worked on major three cloud platforms, which are Azure, AWS, and GCP. Then for the application side, worked on Docker and Kubernetes, like application package management for Docker and container orchestration as Kubernetes to deploy our application as microservices. Then worked with Terraform to provision the infrastructure, maintained the CI/CD pipeline for the CI/CD automation, worked majorly on Jenkins and GitHub Actions, and do following the best security practices which we do have to make sure not only just application is deployed but deployed in a secure format. So yep, and in my recent role, I'm more onto the security and the scalability of my application. So these are the things on which I have my core expertise in my current project, or to make my application more optimized.
Okay, so would you like to take any one project?
Yep, any one like we can choose any one of the projects on which I have worked.
No, no, you take it from your side, Vishal.
Okay, so like can any of be from the AWS, because the things, all the applications I have been worked with, I was from the scratch. So like I was knowing the things very well for that applications, all that projects. So yeah.
You can take any one project like automated AWS infrastructure using Terraform and Cloud Formation,
Okay, okay.
reducing provisioning time by 60%. So, what exactly you did in this project?
Okay, so like when it was an healthcare application, so when I was introduced to this project, it was sort of just past a few of the weeks when the project went live. So I joined as a DevOps. So initially the things were not in very of the architectural way. The things were in an architectural way and unorganized specifically. And that too, like we were having the not the DevOps, but we were having the development engineer. So they do, if they have to do any of the things, they simply go to the console, change the things accordingly to their requirement, and yep, get the things fixed. But coming to the standard way or the organizational way, this should not be the things have to be done. So like I have maintained the SOPs, which is the set of protocols, uh, from the initial line to the end to end deployment. Like from the infra side, we should be having the proper VPCs along with the tagging with the subnet and the CIDR ranges. Accordingly, choosing the right zone, what should be the right zone for my application, and the CIDR ranges should not overlap specifically to any of the private or the public subnet. maintaining the IGWs, which we have the internet gateway, and then the NATs as well for our private subnets. So configuring this and documenting it particularly, so that if in case any of the things have to be changed, there should not be like any of the bridge creation to any of the teams or any of the infra guys, like okay, I have to find this, we already have every of the things documented. So like we have like this, we have documented and planned the resources that are already deployed in the AWS, how well we can structure it or architecture it. So we have defined particularly set up the right t-shirt sizing for the nodes and the virtual machines which we have, to make sure it is cost optimized as well. So listing on all the resources, then planning particularly where we are doing to deploy my application. So this was for the blueprint particularly while restructuring my application. Now what
Great.
I followed, like as we were deploying our application in Kubernetes, so security is my or our company's main perspective, to make sure as we are working on the healthcare application, security is the very most prior thing we have to follow. So we have the VPC layer, then we have the subnet private layers, then we have the particular IAM roles defined particularly for each of the users, and that too we have defined them into the groups for the QAs, devs, and the DevOps for the infras. So any of the user or any of the team member have to do any of the things, they should not be doing with the group users, they should be not doing with the users, but will be going with the groups. So this is how we have structured. And then with the security level, we again have the knuckles, there should be no any of the open ports particularly, which was earlier very much ports which were opened when my application was deployed in an unstructured manner.
Hmm.
So like these are the things particularly initially from the infra side. Then we have our repositories, making sure our docker file, like okay, so coming to security part again, like we were having multiple microservices, so there were a lot of docker files. So converted the single stage docker file to multi-stage docker file, which reduces
Okay.
the size of the docker image, and adding the layer of security for each of the docker file docker image which is getting created. And like as multi-stage docker file is short in size, and it is easily portable, secure as well, so it enhances the particular time whenever running the pipeline, downloading, pushing or pulling to any of the servers. So up to here we have included for the Docker. And then we have Kubernetes, created a private Kubernetes cluster, maintaining the cluster autoscaler option enabled, so that our nodes scale if we have the peak traffic. Then using the autoscalers, which we have the HPA horizontal pod autoscaler. Then we have the KEDA, particularly we have implemented it lately by scaling our microservices based on the API counts, the number of requests coming to that particular APIs. And then like the things were optimizing and keep optimizing, we have implemented monitoring with Prometheus and Grafana, along with the managed CloudWatch, to make sure if any of the things happen, we should be having the alert. And once the alert is triggered, there should be an automated rollback, so that the any of the if any of the service got crashed, there will be the instant rollback for the n-1 release, so that it our application goes back to the stable version. So like this was the like approach I used, particularly in the initial phase, to architect the application which was unstructured.
Nice. So, based on your explanation, Vishal, I think yeah, then you would have acquired very good knowledge in AWS, Docker, Kubernetes, everything you organized, kind of did it from scratch, everything, right? So that's very good. That's good. Actually, I'm happy. After listening all these things, you did it from scratch. Sometimes it's good, when you get everything unorganized and you organize it, so you learn a lot. Okay. Okay. Maybe it would have been very cumbersome and difficult in the initial days, but yeah, you would
Yeah.
have learned a lot. Okay. 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 So, Vishal, I will start with the AWS. Okay. Uh, so, can you describe how would you set up an AWS S3 bucket for storing training data? Okay. What consideration would you take into account for security and access control while set up AWS S3 bucket for storing training data.
Okay, the question is also coming up here. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I have sent you the question. I was writing that question.
Okay. So, like, if it is having any, like, let's suppose the data should be of any of the thing. It can be of any of the videos or any of the files which we have. So, like, particularly for training part, we should be having the right region. What are the bucket, like we have the several types of all the several categories of S3 bucket which are present in the AWS, and accordingly we have to select which is the best suited for our workload according to the cost allocation as per the client. And
Right.
then we have like if we want our buckets to be in separated environment wise, we can create several buckets for dev, stage and prod, or if only one, we can use only one bucket. And then coming to the security part, my bucket should not be having any of the public endpoint, so that the public access to that particular S3 bucket is restricted. Then we can use the encryption particularly for that bucket, so that any of the data transfers through any of the channel endpoints are encrypted, so there are no ambiguity particularly for the data or the workloads which we are
Mhm.
working on. And rest, like we can, if required, we can use particular DNS for the S3 bucket. And make sure we are not using any of the ports, not using any of the IPs. We can use DNS, and we can use the HTTPS mechanism which we have to make sure whenever we are accessing the data in the web browser, we are having the secured URL. And now coming to how to access that S3 bucket, we are having IAM roles defined. We'll be
Mhm.
having one role, and we will be assigning that role particularly to any of the uh, nodes or any of the EC2 whichever is going to access that particular bucket. And that should be allowed in a least privileged manner, so that only the least permissions should be defined to make the connection between the source and destination, whether it can be EC2 or the EKS to the S3 bucket. And like yes, these that are the things I can use, and particularly documenting it particularly. So if in case in the future or in the near future, if I have to modify, I'll be having the exact same configurations which were defined initially.
Good, good. Okay, so let's say your RDS is hitting max connections. Okay, RDS is relational database service. Okay, so how would you diagnose root cause and fix it uh, if it's hitting max connections?
Okay, so like, are there any particular scenarios, or like any generic things which we can use?
A generic thing only.
Okay, so if my RDS is having like number of like getting timed out due to max number of connections, so firstly I'll be investigating the error message from the CloudWatch, what exactly it says. So going through the error thoroughly, what are the bottlenecks, what is exactly happening, is it related to
Right.
the database connections, is it
Mm-hmm.
related to the any of the resources which we are having, the RAM or the CPUs, is it any of the things related to IOPS, which can be for the read or the write operations,
Mm-hmm.
and like what's the blast radius particularly, what are the number of hits particularly we are having to that particularly DB endpoint. So these are the things I'll be investigating, or the approach I'll be using to investigate particularly. Then like accordingly, to make sure the things do not repeat in the future, I'll be making sure my application, or sorry, my database is not only deployed in a single region. We should be having a cluster of databases, so that enabling the multi-AZ deployment. So if in case this scenario happens, my other region which is having the database will be able to serve the traffic, while my main or my original region is failing. Till the time I can fix the changes, but during that my application is still up and able to serve the traffic. And more likely I can to investigate more what exactly had we had what's exactly the RCA, I can SSH into the database. I can check what are the recent activities or what are the bottlenecks, or what are there any of the like which we have the garbage data which is getting stored in the
Hmm.
SQL. If it is there, we have to delete it, or make sure if it is not required, we have to clean it, and make sure the things are working fine after testing.
Yes, yes. Okay. More or less you covered. Okay. So how do you secure S3 buckets from data exfiltration attacks?
Sorry, from which attack?
Data exfiltration.
Ex-
Uh, I have sent you the question. You can see.
okay, so securing S3 buckets, like initially we should be having the check enabled which is blocking the access, which is the public
Okay.
access, which should be blocked particularly. And
Hmm.
the second will be using the proper IAM rules which is defined for that bucket to be accessed from the users or from any of the virtual machines or from the nodes. It should be only using the HTTPS traffic only, so any of the traffic is coming or getting served should be in a secured manner. And then we have like no endpoints should be like no public endpoints should be have we should be having for our S3 bucket. Like these are the like basic or the initial key factors on which I have to make sure my S3 is secured. And if in case any of the things happen, we should be having alarms particularly for that S3 bucket. We can use CloudWatch to trigger the alarms if in case we are having we are serving the bucket is serving traffic from a new range of IP which is not already designed or defined in the application. So like these are the things I'll be making sure while creating or managing the S3 bucket.
Okay. Uh, let's say you need 1 million requests per second. Okay.
Okay.
You need 1 million requests per second throughput for an ML inference point. Let's say, there is ML model and we want to do inference using that ML endpoint that is uh, hosted, let's say, in AWS services. Okay. So the question is, you need 1 million requests per second throughput for an ML inference endpoint. What AWS services would you use to do that?
Okay, so like only for the inference, or like any of the uh, manage.
In inference only.
Is it like related to the CDN which we have the cloud front?
Correct, correct.
Okay, so yep, we can implement CloudFront. We can store our data on the edge locations, particularly that you securely. So the thing is, the request should not be coming to the origin servers. As
Mhm.
if the request will be coming to the origin servers, there will be a bottleneck particularly happening, and like there can be a choking point if there are number of requests coming at a blast number of in event. So making or implementing CDN, storing a data on the multiple edge locations for the clients or the customer, so that there should be the fast retrieval of the data, and our backend servers stay healthy as well. So like these services I'll be using from the AWS to make sure we have the necessary throughput for my application.
Okay, okay. Uh, okay, fine. Let's say you noticed intermittent throttling on DynamoDB or Lambda. How would you debug and fix it?
Okay, again, like we'll be analyzing the error. What
Mm-hmm.
is the pattern? If it is the intermittent issue, what exactly are the patterns? Is it due to any of the only on the peak hours or only on the several times? And like work on the lambda side, so I can use what are the throttles, what are the I mean, not what exactly is triggering that lambda function? Is it in the concurrent type, or one by one getting to inference it, or what's the duration? Like, let's suppose lambda is having a timeout of 15 minutes. So is my function is taking beyond 15 minutes? So if it is, generally I have to make sure or modify my lambda function. And coming to the database, which is the DynamoDB, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what are the read events, what are the write events, and what's the timestamp particularly it is having. I mean, what are the actual read and write operations we are having on the database? We can check on the logs, particularly for the DynamoDB as well. So I can limit the number of injections for any of the lambda function or the database, or I can use redis, manage redis, particularly if we are having any of the data which is coming in queues. Okay, so we are having managed Amazon service, which is SQS, or we can
Mm-hmm.
use redis, particularly depending upon the application and the requirement, to mitigate
Okay.
these types of scenarios, or not
Hmm.
to prevent this in future.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so let's say your EC2 auto scaling groups keeps terminating and launching in instances in a loop. So how do you troubleshoot this?
Okay, so what exactly are auto scaling groups? If we are having my application on one EC2, so to make sure it auto scales, we create the auto scaling groups to
Right.
by defining the threshold value for the RAM and CPU, or for any of the other metric,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon the requirement. So if in case the threshold passes, it creates a new machine. So if it
Mm-hmm.
is getting failed, I'll be firstly checking what are the health checks. While creating the auto scaling groups, we are having the health check. Are they healthy, or are they pointing to the right thing, or what are the load balancer configuration? Are there, I need to check on the load balancer side, are there any health checks which are getting failed, or is my EC2 instance which is having my application running, what's the status of that application? Is it healthy, or is it running not or not? So like, these are the things I'll be investigating it. And to prevent it, I can use or I can implement one new health check, which checks my auto scaling groups periodically. Let's suppose every 1 hour, or every 30 minutes, to make sure the auto scaling groups works fine. And like, then I need to particularly check out the network configurations which we have for the security groups, or if we are having any of the knackles. So like, these are the things I'll be investigating and will be finding the root cause to fix.
Got it. Got it. Uh, how would you design a private EKS cluster with no public internet exposure?
Okay, I have to create an EKS cluster. Okay, so while creating any of the EKS cluster, I'll have to set or configure what are the node size, what should be the availability zones which we are having. So I'll be making sure my EC2 nodes, like which we are having, the EKS nodes, are hosted in the private subnet, and there should be no any of the public IPs. There can be only the IPs of the class A, B, or C class. Then we are having the security groups, where we will not be allowing any of the inbound and the outbound traffic. Then we have the knackles. We won't be allowing any of the traffic, like following the zero trust architecture initially, to make sure uh, my cluster is secure. Then we'll be having repositories, which is the Amazon ECR. We'll making sure my repositories are private as well, but that's beyond the cluster side. Then to serve any of the traffic, like my application or my nodes are in the private subnet, but if they need to communicate to internet, we can or I can implement a NAT instance, particularly to assign to that EC2 node, to make sure if there is any of the connection have to be made, or needs to any pull any of the images from the Docker Hub or from the ECR, I can use that NAT instance to use that. And then to like expose my application for a particular endpoint which we are having, like which we generally use using the HTTPS, I can use Ingress particularly
Mhm.
to in order to host my application with the proper DNS for my application. And then the basic checks we have for the IAMs and the RBACs for our EKS cluster. So we'll be following exactly the same, which we are using till now, or like maintaining the same users and group throughout my application, so that my
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
applications or users are having same sort of configurations across all the AWS accounts and the access as well.
Hmm. Yeah, okay, fine. Uh, so, how good are you in creating Lambda function? I- Are you hands-on? Like, if
Like
I
I
would
haven't
create
to be
Lambda
honest,
function.
like, I haven't created, but yep, I looked it to that, I debugged it, deployed it, but haven't created from the scratch.
Okay, so okay, if I'll ask you to create an S3 bucket with the IAM policy that allows only a specific EC2 role to read and write to it.
Sorry,
Uh,
your voice is breaking.
is it fine now?
Yep, it is fine now.
So I have sent you the question. Create an S3 bucket plus IAM policy that allows only a specific EC2 role to read or write to it. Okay. So, like Terraform or AWS CLI commands, bucket policy, IAM role, test using AWS S3CP. Can you tell me or write?
Okay.
You can take some time to think. No problem. So
Okay.
far, you are going good.
Okay, I have to create a policy that allows only a specific EC2 role to read or write to it. Okay. Okay. Uh, do I need to write that policy?
This Terraform or AWS CLI command bucket policy. Can you write like?
Okay. Policy. Uh, we have. Is my code editor visible?
Yeah, code editor. Yes. From here you can choose also. Where do you want to write? PHP, AWK, Python. Should I? Anything you can choose wherever you are comfortable to write. But
Okay.
yeah, it's up to you.
Like I'm starting with a Terraform specifically, which I
Mhm.
can I'm remembering. I can use. We have a resource, then we have AWS S3 bucket access that allows only a specific role. Okay, AWS access bucket style. What happened over here?
Yes. Yeah, that is okay. Fine.
Okay, log log access. Then we have the bucket. In that bucket, we'll be having the ARN number. Log public knuckles. Oh, my screen flipping. Knuckle access. Bucket is equal to True. Like this is the Terraform block I'll be using. I to be coming to
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm not specifically remembering what should be the value of this field. I need
Ah,
to check.
that's fine.
I
That's
need
fine. That's fine.
I need to check it. But this is the Terraform block I'll be using for
Yeah.
that particular required
Yeah.
scenario.
Okay. Okay. And IAM access role,
Okay.
uh, Terraform and bucket policy, IAM role. So this is bucket is equals to AWS S3 bucket access dot ID bucket. And what about IAM role? And
Okay. IAM role.
hmm,
IAM role from where it starts. Bucket access EC2 S3 E2 S3 bucket. No. Yeah. Then we have policy. Terraform command or bucket policy. Okay, it is the IAM role. So IAM role will be having version, validate, version, and the statement which is in the pattern square bracket, then the curly braces. Then we have the effect which is allowed, and we have principal. We have principal, service dot aws dot com. Okay, and allow action is equal to allow the okay. So we have the policy code यहाँ पे something now sort of STS. Okay, so like this particular section I'll be using, there are few errors that that I need to check specifically. There is one this line which is having the action. So there is one more word I'm not exactly remembering while creating the IAM role, which is related to the name of the role which is creating this role. So this is the particular JSON where I'll be writing the IAM role. But here we do have some sort of names which we write while describing the name of this particular IAM role. So it is something like policy, and then the name I'm not exactly remembering it, but that same name have to be mentioned here. And this is like the normal skeleton I'll be using particularly for this required role.
okay, got it. So that action is like that you are talking about, that S3 get object, S3 put object, those things.
uh Not like get object, but it is for yep, we can use, but it is we have one more line particularly while defining it, the role policy. I'm not remembering the whole name. While defining it the role policy, then we have the name which is defined. and with the action command with the sts, we write that same JSON, then the role name to complete that policy.
Role policy. That AWS IAM policy dot S3RW policy, that one dot ARM.
Yes, particularly like we use generally to also use the get and the put permissions for that bucket wherever, or for that IAM role wherever we will be defining it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay, got it. No worries, no worries. That's fine. Uh, okay, so I will be switching off this code editor. How good are you in Kubernetes and Docker?
Will be rating myself around 8.5 to both of them. We will be rating
Very good.
8 on Docker and 9 on Kubernetes because working more on the Kubernetes side. So,
Hmm.
yep.
Okay, good. Uh, so let's say your pod is stuck in crash loop back off. What are your top five debugging steps would be?
Okay, so my first step is to going to the cluster using the using the kubectl command line utility to investigate the logs for the application where the what exactly happened. Then
Hmm.
we'll be using the kubectl events command to what find exactly when the pod got crashed and what was the main reason. Using the like we'll be having the describe pod command as well. If my pod is crashed, is it due to any of the image issue? If the image is not present, image is defined with the incorrect tag. So but this error create gives image pullback of but still we'll be using kubectl describe pod command to investigate what exactly are we are facing the error. Are there any of the taints or tolerations particularly which is making the pod to go to crash? Are or is my node is having sufficient number of resources to run that particular microservice or that pod? We'll be listing down all the approaches what exactly is causing the error. Or I can use or I can try to, if in the not in the production environment, I can use the restart command as well for that particular deployment to make sure what exactly is if that issue is persistent causing again, if it can be related to any of the network configurations, resource configurations, then we related to any of the repositories for any of the image not present, or is it if it is related to the code only. So these are the things I'll be checking on, and yep, we'll be figuring out the RCA and fixing it.
Okay, got it. So, what is the difference between deployment, stateful set, and daemon set? Can you provide example?
Okay, so coming to the deployment, it is more for the stateless things like which we
Mm-hmm.
have the UI or the web apps. We generally do it using the deployment which we have. Then we have the stateful sets. So let's suppose my microservice is running for three replicas and one replica goes down, but still the two replicas will be able to serve the traffic and one will be coming up. But the third replica for the fourth replica which came will be having its own different name and different IP. So if it is any of the stateless thing, it is fine. But what if it is database or any of the Kafka
Hmm.
cluster? So
Right.
in that scenario we implement or we use the stateful sets as a kind where we'll be
Hmm.
having the particular name and same names for each of the pods, and
Yeah.
we'll be having the IPs particularly which we can use on on the names, not on the IPs. So this is how we'll be defining a particular, or we can say a persistent name for my application or my service to gets communicated. Now what is the daemon set? Daemon set is when we deploy anything using the daemon set, one pod runs on each node. So let's
Hmm.
suppose we are deploying a monitoring tool like Prometheus on our Kubernetes cluster. So one pod will be deployed across all the nodes and will be serving or will be scraping the required data of all the metrics which we have. So in that case we are having the daemon sets.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Good. Uh, How do you debug network issue between pods in different namespace?
Sorry.
How do you debug network issues between pods in different namespace?
Okay, so like, is can I come with a scenario, like, or are there any of the particular
You can come with the scenario, no problem.
Okay, so in Kubernetes, pod do not communicate to any of the other pods automatically. We have to create the service particularly for that deployment or that pod. And also it is for the namespace level, like we are deploying any of the service by default, like we are having the connection up for any of the pod to communicate to any other pod in the same namespace. But I'll be using the kubectl command line utility to test using the -o wide command to check what are the IPs we are using and what are the DNS policies which we have. Generally, if we want to communicate to any of the service in other namespace, we can use the cluster local.svc with the name of the microservice. Also, we can use the other strategy, like I can go to any of the pod using the kubectl exec-it command, and then I can ping that particular other pod with the using ping or telnet command. I can test the connectivity whether they are communicating to each other or not. So these are the like main or the two factors on which I'll be checking if my pod is actually communicating or not. Then if not, then I'll be checking up what are the underlying things. If I'm using the service discovery, I'll be making sure what are, if it is working fine, or what exactly are, I can check the logs for that particular service where are the errors, or I can grab if there are any. Then we'll be fixing the connectivity between the multiple pods.
Okay, how do you troubleshoot a pod stuck in pending state?
I'll be using the kubectl describe command for that particular microservice with the
Mm-hmm.
namespace, and in the bottom in the event section, I'll be checking what exactly is causing that pod not to get scheduled as it is in the pending state. It can be
Mm-hmm.
because of any of the taints. It can be because of any of the resource, like we are not having sufficient RAM or CPU. It can be because of we haven't provided any of the mandatory config maps which are defined in the deployment YAML, but we haven't attached the config map, so the pod is in pending state. And yep, like if also, like if my node is not having sufficient storage as well, sorry, not the storage but not any of this particular IP, so in that case as well, my pod can go to the pending state, and based on the error, or based on the statement written in the event side, I'll be figuring out what exactly I need to fix, and will be redeploying my deployment to get my pod in the running state.
Got it. Good, good. So, how do you secure secrets in Kubernetes?
Okay, so coming to specifically AWS, I was working with enterprise level for Terraform and AWS as well. So any of the secret, all the sensitive data we do not store in the plain text. We have the secrets manager, particularly from the AWS. So using that in a key value pair, like we used it, and for the Terraform vault as well. So any of the database passwords, we have the API tokens or the DB strings are stored in the secrets manager, and the runtime it is getting called and gets the value fetched. It also enhances the security, and making sure we are not writing any of the things in the plain text or any of the YAMLs or in any of the code.
Okay, so if I will ask you to write some code related to Kubernetes, would you be able to write?
Yes.
Okay, so okay, so let's say you have to create a pod that mounts a config map plus secret and verify inside the pod. Step would be you have to create config map, create secret, mount in volumes, and then kubectl execution to inspect files. So Would you be able to do that?
Yep.
How much time will you take to do this?
Like, okay, so I'll be having to create several YAMLs, like three YAMLs particularly for the pod, or like solve the deployment and for the configs, and I can add the configurations in the volume section as well.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Coming to Docker part, so how do you minimize image size for Python ML workloads?
Okay, so specifically for Python ML workloads, uh, I can like my first, as per the standard approach, my first approach will to use the Alpine image, and for from any of the right version which is required as per the application for the Python. It can be 3.9 or 3.10 with the
Mhm.
Alpine base image, so that the OS layer is like the minimal one, which should not lead to the increase size of Docker image.
Hmm.
And then I should not add the cache data into the image. So
Hmm.
using that, as that I have to implement the multi-stage builds, so
Correct.
that
Yeah.
my build and cache like on the cache data is not
Got
getting
it.
into the mesh, only the
Got
build
it.
data, and
Got it.
then using the
What
Docker.
is the difference between entry point and CMD, and when do you use each?
Okay, in Kubernetes or in Docker?
No, no, Docker, Docker.
Sorry, can you please come again?
When do you use entry point and CMD?
Okay.
What is the difference between entry point and CMD basically?
CMD is the default command whenever the containers starts. It is the default command which is going to be executed. Now coming to the entry point which we are having, which is the argument particularly given to that CMD command, which is not being override. So this is how it works in Docker, but in Kubernetes it's different.
Hmm. So, how do you troubleshoot a slow container, let's say?
Okay, so troubleshooting a slow container. Okay, it can be because of multiple scenarios. It can
Mm-hmm.
be related to the high disk usage,
Mm-hmm.
high traffic usage, or the high latency for my application. So I have to check check it particularly from the top level. I mean, if my application is getting slow or my Docker container is like the performance is very slow, I'll be checking out the logs, or if I'm having the monitoring enabled, I'll be having the logs. I'll be checking the uh, uh, IOPS, disk input output operations, what are the CPU and the memory configurations. If they are fine, I'll be moving on to the virtual machine level. If it is my Docker is running in a virtual machine, or if any of the machine is that machine particularly fixed, fine, healthy. If not, I'll be checking up to the networking configurations. What are the latency? Are there any of the packets loss which we are having from the source to the destination? I can use the trace route command particularly to check if I'm having any of the packets loss from the source to destination. So like these are the things I'll be using first from the Docker container resources, then from the OS related all the infra, and then the networking side which we are having. Like these are the approach I'll be checking to fix the slowness of a Docker container.
Got it. Why is running containers as root can be dangerous?
Okay, so recently we came to this scenario as well. So we were deploying our containers or running our pods, and they were running as a root. So even if we have secured it in a very much more
Mm-hmm.
secured, but still, if in the case any user, or let's suppose anyone goes to the container, so they'll be having the whole access as the containers are running as root. So every data will be visible to that particular member or that particular person. So they are not bind it to segregate the things. As they are running as root, they can have the any of the access to perform the operation. Let's suppose to stop the container, let's suppose to copy the data from one container, or listing the files which we are having for any of the container. So in order to make sure or enhance the security, we should be having a particular user with the least privileged access, and that user should be able to run the container all the pod.
Good. So one last question, Vishal. How does Docker use overlay FS?
Overlay FS.
Yeah.
can you help me with the scenario, or like I have to
No, so you can take. I mean, you can give in general answer.
sorry,
You can take scenario from your side. That's fine.
for Docker overlay, right?
Yeah, Docker overlay.
Okay, so it is
Overlay FS. Yeah.
overlay FS, uh, related to the network particularly. FS check we are having.
Like to give you hint, there will be lower layers will be equal to image, upper layer, container writable layer. Uh, so overlay basically overlay FS enable small image size, layer reuse, fast startup. Have you heard?
Yep, particularly which is more specifically to the container D runtime which we are having. That what container will be having what images. So like we are having the read only containers which only reads the data. Then we are having the writable layer which we are having any of the containers which writes many of the microservice which writes the data to any of the disk or to another databases. And then there is one more, like we have the merge layer where two containers work simultaneously for the read and the write operations. So like this is like as of now I have worked with, but I can read more about it as well.
Okay, okay. So do you have any question for me?
uh yep, thanks Deep, thanks for interviewing. It's like it was nice, it's nice. So what exactly is the role look like? As I know, like it's a third party vendor, so